the yes and mentality, what if your kid gets into something that you disagree with and you think is bad? I mean, obviously it's a little different, if they're, dealing heroin, like, okay, that's a little, emergency situations might call for a different response. But if it's the typical, they're adopting a worldview that you think is unhealthy and won't bring them to good places in their lives, start with yes, and then and. So again, so your son tells you, I don't believe in God anymore. So yeah, start with that yes. So really, okay, yes meaning I hear you, and yes meaning I'm curious. So tell me more. What was it that led you to this conclusion? I'd like to hear more about that. And just listen. Parents never listen. They never listen. When their kids adopt a worldview that they don't like, immediately the parents hit them with a wall of words. They start preaching and telling them things. And a lot of times when I've asked parents, they'll say, Jen, my kids, like, they're atheists and they're into all this stuff. And they'll say, give me your advice. And I'll say, okay, well, first of all, let's figure out, what led them to this. Did they find some old Richard Dawkins videos online? That's pretty easy to debunk. Like, what was it that led them to this? And the parents don't know. And I say, well, that's problem number one. They're like, you weren't listening. You didn't ask them how they came to this conclusion. Mm-hmm. So that's where you get that. That's why the yes is so important. So your kid tells you they've adopted some worldview that sounds insane to you. Kids these days, parents hear the crazy. It'll be like, I am part of a polyamorous polycule that takes place entirely on the internet. I mean, this, like, I've heard like 6 or 7 examples of this with what kids are into these days. So I understand that it's hard to have a yes and attitude with that, but I'm telling you, just do it. Yes. Not yes like, I think this is a great idea, but yes meaning I heard you. So tell me more about that. So what makes you feel like being part of this kind of system is good or will lead to good things? Just tell me more. I'm going to shut up. I'll shut my mouth. Just talk. Tell me about that. That's the yes. And then the and is you build on it. So to go back to the atheist example, so if your kid tells you he's an atheist, so yes, I hear you. Tell me how you got to that point. Okay. And have you considered another perspective? Did you ever read this one book that is more from our worldview? And maybe they'll say something back that is more contrary, and you say yes and to that. And yes and promotes curiosity. It promotes dialogue, and it is the best skill I have to give you in relationships, and not just with your kids. I will say, as of this recording, as of when this is released, 1 week from the release day of this episode, let me see if this is true. Yes. 1 week from the release day of this episode, I will have been married 20 years. And yes. And I mean, we've been dating for 22, 23 years. And then we have 6 kids. Oldest is 18, turning out very well. So I have some experience with relationships. And I will say, probably the greatest thing you could do to have a thriving family life, both with your marriage and with your kids, is to have that yes and attitude.